your stuff and everything, so.
Okay, well,
you know, 2 hours
Yeah,
is my math.
no, I'm not including the time it took me to review the assignment.
Okay.
Because that's my preparation, so I don't think you should have to pay for that. So,
Thank you.
but let me know when we get to the 2-hour mark. If you're not all brain dead by then, we should hopefully be wrapped up. But there's still some work that I had not yet completed, so we have to spend a little more time with some of the queries because I didn't get through all of them in the time it took before we started to. Before we started to do the session together online.
Okay.
Okay, so the next two forms on page 122, these are a little more involved because they have, you have, for example, the checkout form, you've got the data at the top, and then you've got some detail information that they're showing below. So the intention of this checkout form is to say, if I pick a seller, I want you to show me all the cookies that they've checked out for sale. And so you can have 1 row, 2 rows, 3 rows, however many different types of cookies they've checked out. You want to show all that detail below. And then the same thing is true with the sales form. I'm going to show the seller information, and then I want to show their actual sales. And again, I can have 1 row, 2 rows, 3 rows, however many records exist in the database should be displayed down there. So these two forms are a little more involved than the first. Start with the seller, go to create form. Okay, so this should look pretty familiar. Okay, this is what we did before. Now I'm going to go into the design view, and what I'm going to do, I won't waste the time modifying these names. Do you feel comfortable with what we did before, that you could do modifications of this, or do you want me to go through it?
I do. I took good notes.
Okay, so I won't go through that part of it. Let me show you how you add that second.
Okay.
Make more room on.
Which page are you doing? The one on the checkout form?
I'm doing the checkout form.
Okay, perfect. Okay, I just want to make sure I was writing my notes on the right one. Thank you.
Yeah. I start with seller because that's the information that appears on the top of the form.
Okay.
So now this other little grid down here is no form, which essentially is a form within a form. But because we created relationships, Access is going to know how to relate the top part with the bottom part. So to do a subform, if I go to the Design tab, you see I can add things like, if I want to add, I can add boxes to my form. I can add checkboxes. I can add a bunch of things. The one labeled subform is the one I want to add here. So if I click on the subform, and then I'm just going to draw it. I'm going to click, literally draw where I want that thing to be. Okay, so then it's going to prompt me. It's going to say, all right, what data do you want to show in this subform? Do you want to use existing tables or an existing form? I'm going to use a table, and I'm going to use the checkout table because I want information from the checkout table. So you notice it says checkout ID, cookie ID, checkout date, and checkout quantity. So I'm gonna pick from my list checkout ID, cookie ID. We're gonna skip seller ID because we know that from up here, and I'm gonna pick checkout date, checkout quantity. So here I'm just identifying what fields I want to show in the subform, and to do that I need to select where the data is coming from. So in this case, it's coming from the checkout table. Okay. Now, here's where the kind of you have to say, how are these two pieces of information related? So how is a seller related to checkout? Okay, so you can either define your own, or we can choose because we've already created relationships in that prior step. So it says, I want to show the checkouts for each record in the seller table, and I'm going to relate those on the seller ID. had I not created those relationships earlier, you wouldn't be able to do this. That's another reason why we have to create the relationships. So I'm going to leave that selected. So choose from a list, leave that selected, click next. And because a subform is actually a form in and of itself, it's going to save as a form object in the database. So I need to give it an appropriate name. Access says, well, why don't you call it checkout subform? Good enough for me. We already have, no, we don't have a form called checkout. So checkout subform is fine. I'm going to click finish. Okay. And then what I need to do is just make this box a little bit wider. Okay. And I'm going to call this one, we have to create another form that's also going to be based on say okay, and then if I go to my form view, so you've got two groups. These are your seller records. So as I navigate through my seller records, you can see how it's automatically filling in that form based on the record. So it relates the seller ID 10 to these three records in the checkout table. Okay. Now, if you want to change the appearance of this subform, then the way to do that, let me close this, is you simply go into the form, the subform itself, and then you can just change like we did before, right? So in this case, it's called, looks like it's called checkout ID, cookie ID. Save that. So now the field names. Widths. If you want everything to show nice and neat. Okay. And then as I scroll through now I can see. And you'll notice that it automatically builds in a scroll bar for us if we have more records than can comfortably fit on the screen. So it automatically throws a scroll bar when we don't have enough.
Yes. Adam!
Rockstone.
Check out. Or if they spell it right. Okay, so again, you'd have to clean these up, move, make these a little smaller, clean up these names here. That should work out. Okay, and then the sales form is essentially done the same way. So again, I'm going to start off using the seller table because that's the main information in this. So we'll do create form. And I won't bother cleaning up the names here. If you go to the design tab here, so in this case, we're showing seller and then we're showing sales information. So I'm going to use the sales table. And they want the reference number, the date, quantity sold, and amount check-in. Same thing here. Because we created this relationship, it knows how to relate seller to sales. Before we wider. A little taller. And so I'll just call this one seller sales. And again, you have to go down to the bottom. If you're navigating through each of the seller records, it's going to display their sales. Here, just make it bigger. Clean up the names, you know, so they match what's in the assignment. Okay. Piece of cake, right?
Oh yeah, sure.
If you've been doing it for 20 years, that's okay. Okay, so we also have a couple of reports to go through. This is on starting on page 123. So the process for doing the report is first you identify what information you need, which is displayed here for us. But usually the easiest way to create a report is to first build a query, and then you can use that query as the data source for the report. When you build a report, you can either use a table as a data source, or you can use a query as a data source. Okay? The reason you would use a query is because if you look at the report on page 123, the cookie name comes from the cookie table. The packages sold comes from the sales table, and the sales also come from the sales table. So we're going to be pulling information from two different tables here. The last field there called gross income, that's actually going to be a formula, because the gross income is always 50% of the sales price, because the instructions said they take the price and they mark it up 100% before they sell it. So if you're going in the other direction, you have to cut it in half to come up with the amount of gross income. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so you're going to sell this chocolate chip tin for $10. You paid $5 for it. You make $5, and that's the amount that's going to go to your charity. All right. So to design a query, go to the Create tab, and you can go to this Query Design. And the Query Design is going to ask you where is the information coming from that you're going to use to build this query. So we said, well, we know that cookie name comes from the cookie table, so I'm going to add that one. We know that packages sold and sales come from the sales table, so I'm going to add that one. Okay. But I have a problem, because the first column in this table, or in this report rather, is called cookie name. Okay. Actually, no, that's fine. The cookie name is right here, isn't it? Yeah. Never mind. Check ID. Okay. So I think that should be fine. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to take these two. Actually, no. I can't do this directly. If you look here in the sales table, I knew I wrote this note down for a reason. If you look in the sales table, which is where we're getting our packages sold, which is quantity sold, and we're getting the sales number, which is actually amount checked in, I don't see any reference in this table that gets me to a cookie, right? There's no relationship between cookie and sales. So the question is, how do I get to cookie name if I don't have anything here in the sales table to get me there? Okay, well, in this particular case, for this query, we have to add another table. And I'll explain why we're adding the checkout table. Once I add the checkout table, now see I have a bridge between sales and cookie. So when I have the sales table, using the ref number, remember we created this relationship before, so using the ref number, I can get to the checkout ID, and then I can use cookie ID to jump over to this table so I can pull cookie name. So again, we're creating these relationships, and this is how we're going to use them. I'm going to reorder this because I think it makes more sense to look at it this way. So again, just to kind of clarify, I have sales, and then I have my cookie table, which contains the cookie name. But I don't have any way to get directly from the sales table to the cookie table because there's no fields that are in common between those two tables. So what I have to do is I have to find a bridge that allows me to get from sales to cookie. So if I add the checkout table, I can use this ref number, get the checkout ID. I can look up the cookie ID from this table, and I can use this to jump over here to get the cookie name. I know that's not really intuitive or necessarily obvious, but when you have these two tables, like I have here, you can see there's no relationship between them. So there's no way I can get from sales to look up a cookie name. So I've got to do something. I've got to figure out, is there a table in the database that will allow me to kind of bridge between those two? And if I look at the tables in the database, the only one that gets me there is the checkout table. So I can look ref number, look at checkout ID, because these two are related. And from this table, I can find the cookie ID, then I can look up the cookie name. Okay, so to pick the fields I want for the report, I can either double click them or I can drag them down into the grid here. So I'll just double click cookie name, and I'm going to pick them in the order they appear on the report to make it easier. So the packages sold relates to quantity sold. Sales relates to amount checked in. Okay. So if I run this query now, I'm going to see here's the name of the cookie, quantity that was sold, and the gross sales. But notice I'm pulling information really from two different tables here. From the sales, some is coming from the sales table, and some is coming from the cookie table. And this is possible because of those relationships that I created earlier on. Without creating those relationships, this would not work. I'm going to go back to my design view. And then the final field here is called gross income. I don't have a gross income, right? This field amount checked in represents the sales value, but it doesn't represent the amount of the income that we're going to be able to keep. So to do that calculation, I have to put a formula in this field here. And the way you do that is I'm going to identify what I want to call this field. So I'm going to put gross income and a colon. And then when I want to do a formula, I need to put a field name inside of square brackets. It's just the way that Access requires us to do it. So I'm going to type amount checked in. And I'm going to multiply that using asterisks by 0.5. So this will take whatever is in this field, it will multiply it by 0.5, and then this field will be labeled gross income in the query. So I'll run it again, and now you can see gross income. This is formatted with $signs because the amount checked in field in the database is currency. So Microsoft Access automatically will make this we'll show it with currency symbols. This field is a formula, and therefore it is not formatted. So you need to format that in the actual report instead of formatting it here. Okay, so all we care about in this case is that we're getting the correct number. And you can see 5 is half a 10, 2.5 is half a 5. So I think that gives us the right values. Now I already saved my query. You can see I called it daily cookie income because that was the name of the report. So I'm not going to save this one because this one is identical to it. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. I just wanted to kind of show you the process for building this one.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll show you my query just to show you that it is in fact the same, just organized a little differently. Okay. The other thing that that I threw in here was I threw in the sale date here. And the reason I threw in the sale date is if you look at the report, it says daily cookie income, and then down below it says current date. So we also need to be able to supply a date to the report. Did the instructor mention if it was always supposed to be the current date or if it's a date that you type in? Do you say anything about that?
No, I don't remember anything.
Okay, then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to assume I think we should probably just assume that, well, that's not really going to help because all the data in the tables is like really old. I noticed that there's like really old dates here. So the current date, if you run it for the current date, it's not going to show you anything. What I did in my query is I created this parameter. So what this will do is this parameter will prompt you when you run the query. So if I were to run this query right now, see, it's going to say enter the date. So whatever I type down here shows up in the prompt. So if I type in a date that I know there's information for, then I'll get some records. But if we ran the same query and we used the current date, then we're obviously not going to get anything because there's no records for that date. That's why I was asking that question, because I'm not sure what the best way to proceed with this is. I think you're almost forced to prompt somebody for a date, because otherwise, just use the current date, you're not going to get anything. Any thoughts on that?
No, that makes sense. I mean, I can't.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't imagine it would be something different. That makes sense.
Okay, I'm gonna leave it this way then because again, if you run this for the current date, you get nothing. So this query then, I forgot that I had added the sale date in here because we needed that for the report. So when you want to prompt a user, notice in this criteria, I'm in this criteria row here. When you want to prompt the user, you put whatever text you want to show up in the prompt box inside of square brackets, right? So if I just change this to hello, when I run the query, it's just going to say hello. So whatever I type in the box between square brackets will show up as the prompt for the user. Okay, so I get that date. If I was a student, I'd be a little concerned that this data was as old as it is, but I don't know. Anyway, so that's
as a student, I'm more concerned that he's having us make this assignment that's so intense. Well, we don't even know how to use the database. It's kind of ridiculous. But anyways, that's a subject for another day.
right. For the next report, that's on page 124. It is almost identical to the other report, but there is a big difference. It's called cumulative cookie income. So what that implies to me is that we have to add up all of the records for a certain date. And what we basically are going to wind up with is, let me run this query for you. Again, this prompts for a date. Okay, but notice I only get one row for each cookie name, right? So there's a total of, so if I run this one again, let me run this one again and show you what the difference is. So let's look at a lot of chocolate chip 1 pound tin. Okay. See, you have one record here that has 2. You have another record down here that has 1, and then another record down here that has 4. 4 plus 2 plus 1 is 7. So this shows you the individual records for that given date. What this one does is it rolls all those up. Now it only shows me a total of 7 for that type. So the difference again is just I'm taking the records and I'm flattening them, so I'm only showing one record per cookie name, but I'm showing the total amounts here. So you see the sum was 7. This is the total of the sales. This is the total gross income. Okay, and how you do that is in Access, you use this totals button to go sums. So you can see here in the quantity sold field, I have the sum of sales and the amount checked in, sum of sales. Here's my formula. So that's not any different than it was. And then the other two are labeled as group by, because what I want to do is I want to group the records by the cookie name. So it's going to look for all the records that have the same cookie name, and it's going to collapse them together, and it's going to give me the total quantity sold and the total amount of sales for that. So that's the difference between those two queries. One is using the sums, and one is just giving me the raw records for that particular day. Once you have the queries created, then you can build the reports pretty easily based on the query. So I have one down here already, but let me walk you through how that works. Anytime you want to add a new object to your database, you're going to use the Create tab. And in this case, I've got a bunch of options for creating reports. I'm going to use the wizard, and the wizard is going to walk me through a series of steps that asks me, for example, okay, what do you want to use as the data source for your report? So I'm going to use this query that I built called Daily Cookie Income, and I'm going to just move over all the field names. Okay, cookie name, all those. I want to show one row for each cookie, so I'm going to select by sales, and it's going to show the cookie name, quantity sold, amount checked, gross income, and sale date for each record. I do not wish to add any grouping levels. And if I look at the report, it appears to me as if it's sorted by the cookie name with a lot of chocolate chip on top and then sweet dreams on the bottom. So I'm assuming it's alphabetical by cookie name. So I select that here. And then you can either select, there's different layouts, and you can see kind of by the little thumbnail here what they're going to look like. The default is tabular. So we're going to leave it that way. And then you can determine whether you want it to show up as a portrait or you want to flip it on its side and show it up as landscape. Typically, if you have a lot of fields on the report, you would flip it to show a landscape. In this case, we only have 4 fields, so it's probably okay to leave it as portrait. And then it says, what do you want to call your report? So let's call it report. Okay, and there's our prompt. So it just goes ahead and it shows us that information on the report. Now, one of the things is we don't want to show the sale date down here, right? Because if you look on the actual report itself, it only shows the date one time at the top of the report. So reports, like forms, can be designed. Okay, so this should look kind of familiar based on what we saw for the form. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this sale date field, and I'm going to see if I can just drag it up here like that. And I'm going to click on this label to remove it. I don't need it. And then if I look at the report, okay, so now it's going to show up here at the top rather than showing up as a separate column. Okay. And again, in the design view, you can do things like, right, so this is quantity sold, but on the report, it actually says packages sold. Okay, instead of amount checked in, this actually says sales. And gross income. And each time you run the report, it's going to do that same prompt. So do things like change those field names. Another thing you might want to do here with the gross income is, let's see if we can format this. Okay, so with this field selected, I can go ahead and I can select a currency for that field, and then so now it shows up the correct form. So, you know, and the other thing you get with reports is it's going to show you the date that it was printed, and it's going to paginate it. So if there was more than one page, it would paginate the pages for you. So that's basically how you would go through the process of creating a report. Now, I'm not sure how to, you know, we only have 15 minutes here, and the issue is that the meat of this assignment is really on page 124. So what I've done is, you see those first 4 queries there, based on gross sales, which grade is sold the most, based on gross sales, etc. So I created the queries, and I just called them query 1, query 2, query 3, and 4. That's as far as I got before I had to jump on the call. So I'll have to work with you separately to, you know, to complete the queries for the remaining, because unfortunately it's not really straightforward how to design some of these queries. And I'm really shocked when I'm looking at these that you guys are expected to know how to do this. I mean, to me, it's just,
We are too, seriously.
it's just really bizarre. So, you know, you said your budget was 2 hours, and I totally respect that. I was a college student one time myself, but I think there's still going to be a little more work to get this across the finish line. And if it's, you know, okay, I can just work with Sabrina directly to kind of finish the remaining queries that have to be done, because we're definitely not going to have enough time to do it. But let me just show you what I did here. Query 1, this is based on gross sales, which grade had the most cookies. Identify the grade level and the gross sales. So again, what I did is, I know that the grade isn't part of the seller table, and I know that the sales is part of the sales table. So I just added those 2 tables to my query. I double-clicked this field and this field to bring them in here. And then I used the totals button. So if you take the totals button away, you're just going to see a bunch of amounts and grades, right? But we want to see which grade sold the most. So we need to roll them up. And I only want to see 1 line for grade 6, 1 line for grade 4, etc. So that's where I use the totals here. So when I add totals, I want to group by the grade. In other words, I want all the grade 6s together, all the grade 5s together, and then I want you to sum those amounts. So I get one total value for each grade level, and then that's what I see here. So then I can answer the question that grade 6 sold the most, $222, okay? But I don't know that you guys are going to be able to, you know, figure out the rest of these queries, because I was getting stuck on some of them myself. Number 2 was based on gross sales, which students sold the most, right? So I can see from the query here that this girl sold the most. And again, it's just the seller. In this case, I'm putting the first name and last name, whereas in the other query, I put the grade. So there's just first name and last name. And then again, the same thing. The amount, I'm summing the amount, and I'm grouping by the student's name. So it's very similar to the earlier query. Instead of grade, I'm using the first name and last name, but you basically get the same result. So there's 1 row for each student showing their total sales. So I can answer that question that this student here was the one that sold the most. 3 is based on gross income, what is the most popular cookie? So remember, we have sales and we have cookies, but we don't have a bridge between them, so I had to add this checkout table. But all I'm doing is I have the amount checked in and the name of the cookie. So it's really similar to the other 2 queries, with that difference of I need to bring in this table so that I can pull across the cookie. And I can see here or there that this 1 pound tin was the one that sold the most. And then I got to 4. Which students have sold all the cookies that they have checked out? And you know, like I said, this one's not easy, as you can see. Basically, what this is, it shows me the students where what they sold is equal to what they checked out. So in the first case, this Ashley Zuckerbrow, she checked out 1, she sold 1. Claude checked out 2, sold 2. But if you look, at the data, you can see that there's plenty of cases where the students checked out more than they've actually sold. And there's some students, the one I was, number 5 was the one I was beginning to work on when I had to break, but it says, which students have cookies checked out but have not turned in any money? So it'll be very similar to this one, but the parameters and things are going to be a little bit different here. But so that's why I'm saying I think this is going to be really tough, to walk you guys through what's necessary to finish the rest of these in 14 minutes. So we may need to extend this perhaps an additional hour, and I think we should be able to wrap it up within that time. But that's your call.
Well, what I'll have to do is probably, Thursday's payday, I might have to check back with you and maybe finish it up on another day.
Okay.
Maybe even I can, or if it's recorded, yeah.
I can give you this database. Wisan's policy is we don't do your assignments for you, but I really think that these are very extraordinary circumstances. So I'd be more than happy to just zip this thing up and send it to you. And then we can work together to complete those remaining queries. And if that's suitable, then
yeah, that would be great.
Okay. So you let me know when you want to finish this. I know it's due on the 5th. You said. Is that right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
We still have some time to do this. So you can just let me know when you want to get back together again. And in the meantime, I'll send you this database that we worked on here today.
Okay.
I'm hoping you don't have any more of these assignments that you're going to have to do.
We're almost done with the class. No, we don't. I mean, the other assignments were reasonable, build a website. We had reasonable assignments. This is a very unreasonable expectation, I'll have to say. And our whole class is really lost on it. It's not just us. I think there's one guy that gets it, and so and probably has, experience, I'm assuming.
You have to have experience because
right.
And I'm, like I said, when I got to these queries, I'm like, geez, are you kidding me? So, I mean, some of these are really, really involved. So, but I'm pretty confident that we can wrap this up, and I'll cap it at an hour. I don't care how much time it actually takes, but I'm pretty confident we can probably do it within an hour. So,
okay.
All right. Anything else before we sign off for the evening?
No, that sounds good. Do I need to give you my email address or how?
No, you can just contact me through Wisan.
Okay, I didn't know how you would send the database, like for me to.
I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go into. Let's see.
Oh, you have my email because I sent you the documents. I'm sorry, it's kind of late.
Well, I do. But if we go to, let's see, I'm not in that screen. If we go into Wisan right here, I can just attach the file directly.
Okay, so see, I didn't have those options on my end. No.
That's weird. I don't know why. Because I've had others attach PDFs and stuff, so that's kind of.
It doesn't even look. I don't have attached file, select template. I have send, write the message, and then the send buttons to the right of write the message. My screen looks different.
Okay.
So.
Okay, so this should. It's not that big, so it's fine. Okay, so you should be able to download it and open it up and look at it now. If not, let me know. I'll also send it to your email just so you have a plan B.
Okay.
Okay, anything else?
No, that was great. That was I appreciate all your help.
No worries.
Okay, and then I'll get in touch with you to do the rest of it. So yeah, and then just if it recorded, I don't know how you would know if it worked or not, but
yeah, I'm gonna figure that out.
Okay.
See if I can figure out if it recorded, and if so, how to share it with you, and I'll let you know.
Okay. Thanks so much, John. It was really good. I really appreciate your help.
No problem. Thank you.
All right. Have a good night.
You too.
Thanks. Bye.
Dungeon.